Well, good evening and welcome to the January version of the Community Development Committee meeting. We'll start the way we always do, introducing ourselves. Let's start with Sean.
Sean Anderson, represent District 2.
Ryan Shirley, I represent District 13.
Jerry Van Zomer, I represent District 18.
I'm Scott Coner, represent District 11.
I'm Dan Hansen. I represent District 12 and I chair.
Ellen Denzer, Community Development Director.
I'm Ken Witt, the County Administrator. I represent all the constituents.
Heather Emus, Corporation Counsel.
Tim Scootley, UW Extension.
Kristen Bruder, former extension here, but still an extension.
Julie Peterson, Community Development Department.
We also have County Supervisor Tim Ramberg, and so there you have it. I'm changing the order of this agenda. If you're looking at it, we're going to do the update on the neighbors' concern along the Wildwood Trail first, and then we're going to introduce Tim, and then we're going to go into the public hearing. So as you're looking at the agenda, if we go along, first we'll do the minutes approval, then the public comment, and that's how we'll take the agenda. So please bear with that. Thank you. Does anybody have anything to add to the minutes from last meeting or concerns? Then they'll stand approved. We'll move right into public comment. I have one slip, and that's from Mr. Peavy.
No red light, is this one on? It's on, okay. Hello, my name is William Peavy. I live at 2530 County Road in Woodville. Thank you, Chairman Hansen, for allowing me to speak. My family lives on a Century Farm, located right next to the railroad right away. Why am I here? The concerns about the former railroad right-of-way from Woodville to Spring Valley became an issue because of a nasty, threatening, and abusive letter concerning the railroad signed by Parks Administrator Dennis Merkel, dated 5/18/22. It appears no research was done for this letter. In one case, one of my crossings was blocked by a log. If any questions had been asked, I could have shown 3 clearly allowed crossings from my deed. Another threat in Mr. Merkel's letter was about fences being cut. A simple call would allow me to show him the difference between my fence and the old railroad fence. They're separate strands and separate places. So let me tell you a short history of the railroad right-of-way. On one of my 40-acre parcels, I have 7 parcels along the railroad, approximately 1.5 miles. All deeds to the railroad are different. There's not a boilerplate copy, but contain the same language in different forms. In 1882, a gentleman named E.S. Austin, acting as land agent, purchased, and I quote, the right-of-way for a railroad and, quote, shall operate a railroad thereon. Note that no purchase of the land was transferred, and I have the deed, and I actually have it with me from that transfer. In 1889, E.S. Austin transferred the property with the following language. The right-of-way, that said land to be used for railroad and sidetrack purposes and to revert to said grantees, their heirs, or assigns when it shall cease to be used for such purposes. Again, I have that transfer paper. According to the Woodville history book, the last train was in 1953. The rail was removed in about 1954. The railroad right-of-way was used by adjacent landowners after abandonment as if they owned it. In 1970, St. Croix County, without doing due diligence, purchased a quitclaim deed from the railroad who did not even own it. Do a little research and you will find that quitclaim deed is of little value. Some parcels have been taxed and some are not even listed as being existing on the official town assessment roll. This is why we're here tonight. I, along with probably 25 citizens along the railroad, met at the O'Galley Town Hall on January 12th. These landowners along the railroad right-of-way own the trail and have documents to prove it. Mr. Merkel poked the hornet's nest and he got the results wanted. I hope we can satisfactorily reach an agreement, solution to the problem. It would be a shame if legal action had to be taken. Thank you for your time.
Bill, thank you for coming. We're going to go right into the update on neighbors' concerns along Wildwood Trail from county staff. Who'd ever like to address that?
Yeah. So the neighbors along the trail, as you heard from Mr. Peavy, have some issues and some concerns. They had a meeting last Thursday, which we were aware of, and really we're working with that group, being in contact with them to find out what those concerns are. And I have every confidence that whatever the issues are that they have, we will come to some sort of agreement on of how to resolve that conflict. So I have no doubt that we'll get to a resolution. And if it takes a change in policy or something like that, we'll bring that before the committee. If it's just simple actions that staff can take, then we'll take those immediately. But we'll work with that resident group and come to a resolution on what the issues are.
Any questions, comments from the committee members? Go ahead.
Yes, the only question I have on it, there, not hearing the whole thing as far as I see where there's the issues that are being addressed, but is the intent that they want the trail completely shut down and revert back to the owners?
Yeah, I don't believe that's the intent. I think some of the property owners maybe contest the ownership rights of it, but we'll get some 1,800 lawyers to fight that out. But, I'm joking about that. But, I mean, there's a lot to law that's that old. And so it would be a protracted legal battle, and that isn't anything that the county is interested in partaking in either. So really, we'll get to what the issues are, and we'll sort that out. And if the issues is over ownership, well, then that's probably not going to be nearly as neat and clean. But I really think the issues are probably more around access on the trail than the trail existing.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts at this point? Sean?
Yeah, I just want to say it sounds like multiple people have land on both sides of the trail, so it makes sense for them to have paths to cross it for farming or just because it's their land.
Was there any reason why this all came up in the first place? I mean, it's been going well since 1882, and all of a sudden, shazam! Here it is. What propagated this, and is that? Can we just get that taken care of and be back to where we were?
Yeah. Well, we didn't get involved really until the 1960s, probably. I think when the county acquired the trail property. We've developed the trail over the years. We've invested money into making it a usable feature for the residents of St. Croix County. And I think it's just some of the rules that are on the trail. So, I mean, they've been in place for probably quite a while. No ATVs on the trail, I think, is one of the ones in question. So we've always allowed crossing, but probably not riding down the trail. And that's probably, one of the issues that's in contention is that, I want to get to my other property, so does that mean I can ride down the trail a little ways, or I have to go directly across. Those are the types of issues that I think we need to work through and come to an agreement on about what is permissible and what wouldn't be permissible. And then I think everyone will be happy again.
I would certainly encourage that. There are a lot of people that use that trail. I would hate to see it closed, but I know too that perhaps the way we went at trying to change the rules wasn't with a lot of forethought either. So yeah, please work on that. Please get that together.
Ryan?
Just a quick note for the limited amount that I know about the issue, and I've talked to a few people about it, but if it comes down to actual ownership, then what legally, Heather, where are we at with, keeping the trail open if we don't actually own it?
I am still researching that issue, and it appears that past corporation councils have researched that issue also, because there is a huge binder in our filing cabinet regarding the Wildwood Trail, so that's still something we're researching. But in speaking with one of the landowner's attorneys and other spokespersons, that is something we would hopefully get a global resolution to, if we can find out from the property owners what the concerns are, what their wishes are, and address that without going to a protracted court trial on that. If we can address that ownership issue, as Mr. Peavy indicated, deeds state different things all along the trail, and so some of them have reversionary clauses, some of them don't, and so each parcel will have to be looked at separately, but hopefully we can engage with all the property owners and reach some type of global resolution that is acceptable to everyone.
Okay, I appreciate everybody's thoughts and time, and hopefully congeniality will be the tone that we take, and respect, and we'll come to a congenial, respectful, and ultimately a conclusion that'll allow everybody to enjoy this trail, and we won't have the conflict that seems to be foreboding and on the horizon. So thank you for your time. Thank you for coming. Okay, now we're going to turn this over to UW Extension. Madison and Kristen.
Okay, thank you. Just as the official handoff, I know the last few times I've been here, it's been we're hiring, we're trying, so we have the official, we have Mr. Stutley here right in our midst. So I just want to again say thank you for the last 6 years, 5.5 years, as I served St. Croix County for Extension. It's been, honestly, St. Croix County has been a great experience working with supervisors, working with staff and administrators. So a heartfelt thank you as I move now into Area 6, or have moved into there. And I'm just really excited for you all as somebody I think will do great things for this area and for Extension in St. Croix County as well. So I'm going to introduce Tim here and let him kind of give you a background of where he's at and maybe some of the thoughts he has moving in. So thank you.
Yeah, good evening. Happy to be here. My name is Tim Scootley, and as you just heard, this is day number 12 of my new position as the Area Extension Director. But Kristen has taken good care of this area, and I'll continue that moving forward. The position stays the same, so an Area Extension Director serving your friends Pierce to the south and Polk to the north, and then St. Croix County. With my home office out in the Baldwin Ag and Education building. Until January 2nd, I was the principal of a middle school. I worked in the Eau Claire area school district. So I do currently go up over the Knapp Hill to work. I have kids in 8th and 10th grade, so school is going well, so a little bit of a drive for now, which I'm happy to do to keep them settled with where they are. I got interested in Extension, an educational organization, kind of personally. My kids are in 4-H and have had a lot of opportunities through those programs with youth development in our county. I'm also a volunteer project leader in that capacity. And then we have good friends that we've gotten to know through 4-H that are part of the agriculture community. They run a dairy farm of about 200 head. And so to be able to work with the ag extension folks has been fun. I know what a cross calf is. That's about where it ends, but I'm still learning. And then obviously more of a professional experience is to work with a community to make sure that we're providing food support or working with our community nonprofits and organizations, health and well-being position here in our county, looking at mental health. Those are things that certainly have an overlap from my former position. Kind of by design, I started, and the first couple days, to be honest with you, were do I have a badge? Where do I park? How do I get multi-factor authentication to work for UW-Madison? And then started to kind of widen the circle. I'm happy to report now that I've met with every one of the 15 educators in the area and spent some time just, what's working? What are the challenges? Who are your partners? How can I help? What do I need to know on the way in? I'm appreciative of Administrator Witt's time a couple weeks back just to say hello quickly in his office along with the other two counties. And now kind of that widens again. So it's nice to be with you tonight. This meeting is well timed. I got to be with our friends in Polk County yesterday. So just meeting some more new faces and folks that I'll be working with. But what a wonderful county. From your vantage point, you should know that just a very warm welcome from every department and every phone call that I've made to ask that new guy kind of a question throughout the county. So a very warm welcome from all the departments, and also getting familiar with the structures and things. It's been I think pretty smooth sailing so far. So I look forward to working with you more and more as I get up to speed. But thanks for the opportunity to introduce myself quickly.
Any comments or questions for Tim? Welcome. Thanks for coming.
My pleasure. Thank you, gentlemen.
All right. Now we're going to go into our public hearing, starting out with number 1, which will be rezoning request for Mulliken property, Town of Stanton. And John, turn it over to you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. The public hearing before you tonight is for a rezoning application in the town of Stanton. The applicant is Mr. Eugene Mulliken, and the site address is 1547 State Highway 64. And there are actually 2 components to the rezoning application. One is to rezone 4.93 acres from Ag 1 to R1 residential, and the second component is to rezone 0.11 acres from R1 residential to Ag 1 agricultural district. So really the basic elements to this rezoning is that the applicant desires to reconfigure parcels in order to eliminate existing buildings located within 2 different zoning districts. And these lots were created by a prior certified survey map in 1993, which was 30 years ago. So I'm not sure how these buildings ended up on the lot lines. If it was more of a building permit issue, we're not sure. But portions of the rezoning is to clarify that issue. Additionally, the applicant desires to adjust some lot lines slightly with a neighboring parcel. The important feature for the committee to recognize is that the requested rezoning will not create any additional parcels for building eligibility purposes. And the survey on the next page of your packet best illustrates what's being requested. So we have Highway 64 running east-west at the top of the survey, and we're just east of the city of Richmond, and we'll show a broader map perspective after this one. But the areas you see in yellow would be rezoned from from Ag 1 to R1. That's the 4.33 acres. And then the small green triangle that you see would be rezoned to Ag 1 from the R1 district. And you see that there's a portion of a building that rests on 2 different parcels. The applicant desires to fix that. But in fixing that, he would have a parcel in 2 different zoning districts, which is why we're before the committee tonight for the rezoning. And secondly, you see the existing house on lot 1. I'm using the cursor on the screen. But that house almost touches the southerly lot line of existing lot 1. So they're going to be adding some acreage to that and adjusting for that structure to meet the new setbacks from the new lot line. Showing you a broader perspective, this is the 2 parcels in question. You see the larger piece that Mr. Mulliken owns in the town of Stanton, just east of the city limits. You see the city limits in New Richmond actually come up and underneath the southerly portion of this parcel. Highway 64 running east-west. And then this just shows an aerial photo. Not exact, but again, this red lot line actually comes down a little bit further. This map was taken off of our GIS, so these parcels and these parcel lines are not exact, but there is a lot line that runs through this structure. General features of the property, you'll see that the areas in green are zoned Ag 1 agriculture. Everything in yellow is the R1 residential district. The parcels can best be described in the immediate area as cropland to the south and east, and then we have some scattered large lot development to the north and west of this parcel. With all rezonings, we review the comprehensive plan under state statute. Any rezonings must be consistent with the jurisdiction's comprehensive plan. So we took a look at the town of Stanton's comprehensive plan, and you see at the tip of the red arrow here, the 2 single-family parcels are currently allocated as mixed rural, which does support larger lot residential development. Then we have the area in green that supports ag, forest, and grassland. So really what the applicants are doing is not in conflict with the town of Stanton comprehensive plan. We also cite some relevant comprehensive goals and objectives from the town comp plan that I won't go into detail, but they are in the packet in the record. Next, we took a look at the St. Croix County Comprehensive Plan and the future land use map. And the area in question is circled in blue at the tip of the red arrow. And you'll see that these parcels are designated for future agriculture and mixed rural agriculture. And very much like the town of Stanton plan, these do support larger lot development for residential as well as agricultural uses. So again, the request is not inconsistent with the county comp plan. Next, we take a quick look at some of the natural resource features. The parcel does not contain any waterfowl protection areas, prairie remnant sites, sensitive areas, or scenic and rec areas. You'll see that within a portion of the subject property, which is highlighted with the blue edging, a portion of the property is included in an environmental corridor, and that corresponds to a shoreland overlay district. And that's basically areas within 1,000 feet of a navigable water. So just to the south and west off the map is a smaller pond, and that 1,000-foot line from that pond does come to within the subject property. The parcel does not contain any closed depression areas, streams, wetland, or floodplain categories, as I just mentioned. That green striped area you see within the subject property is a portion of a shoreland overlay district area. The parcel does contain some small areas with slopes in excess of 20 feet, and according to our soil mapping information, it's indicative of farmland, productive farmland in the area. With all rezonings, we ask for input from the town, and the Plan Commission for the town of Stanton recommended approval of the rezoning on January 10th, and then the Stanton Town Board recommended approval on January 12th. And they actually saw the rezoning as a positive. They saw it correcting a couple of lot line features that they were happy to see. Some of the technical review findings that we look at, we pull some of the objectives from the county comp plan. That this request will guide rural development to locations that will not convert productive ag land, and the subject property is not currently being used for agriculture. It's kind of a grassy area. The rezoning will provide a balance of land use types throughout the county. Again, we're just adjusting lot lines, so we don't see any deviations from that. Development in the county shall be consistent with the character of the surrounding neighborhood or terrain, and again, we're adjusting lot lines. We're not really creating any new developments or land divisions with this request, so we don't see any impact to that policy. The rezoning should be consistent and not in conflict with the St. Croix County Natural Resource Management Plan, and the development of the property shall comply with standards in the Chapter 15 zoning code. In terms of applicable statutes and criteria, the CDC shall only recommend approval for rezoning subject to the provisions below, that the rezoning is consistent with the St. Croix County Comp Plan, the Natural Resource Management Plan, and the St. Croix County Zoning Ordinance, that the town has not disapproved the rezoning request, and as we mentioned earlier, They recommend approval of the request, and that the rezoning and proposed use is consistent with surrounding districts and does not result in spot zoning. And again, it does not result in spot zoning because it is consistent with the comprehensive land use plan. The action before the committee tonight is to recommend approval or disapproval of the zoning amendment. And based on staff review of the findings and review of the application, we are recommending approval of the request to the committee tonight based on the technical review findings 1 through 5 I just recited. Also, the applicant desires to reconfigure the parcels in order to eliminate existing buildings located within 2 different districts and increase the acreage of 2 lots created by a prior CSM or certified survey map. As part of the findings, we are clarifying that the requested rezoning will not create additional parcels for building eligibility purposes, that the request is consistent with the future land use plan maps of both the town of Stanton and St. Croix County, and does support the rezoning to R1 and Ag1 agriculture respectively, that the town of Stanton Plan Commission and town board have recommended approval of the request, and that the proposed use is consistent with and can comply with standards in Chapter 15 zoning. That concludes the staff overview. As a result of the published notice in the paper and mailed notices, we have not received any public comment.
Very good. Is there any member of the public who would like to speak for or against this? All right. This ends the public hearing on this. I'd like to move to business item, which is now business item number, it's listed as business item number 2 on the agenda, which is, we're taking it as number 3. And I would entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we allow this change. The town of Stanton and the commission of Stanton has agreed with it. Our people have, so I would recommend that we go with that.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Very good. Any discussion? Seeing none, put her to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Thank you. This will go to the county board for final action on February 7th.
Very good. We'll move up to public hearing number 2, request to reduce platted structure setback. John?
I think Mike's going to.
Or Mike, I'm sorry. Forgive me, Mr. Wozniak.
Good evening, committee members, staff, and any public, if there is any here. You have on your agenda a request for a road setback reduction waiver. I'll note that the applicant for this item is Jeffrey Olson, site address 1084 110th Street in the town of Warren. This property is in an R2 zone district, and it's the current CSM has includes the 100-foot setback reference that hence makes it subject to a waiver to reduce it to the requested 50 feet to be approved by the committee, and also as is typical, a correction instrument prepared by a registered land surveyor. I'll run through this fairly quickly. I know that you're familiar and have dealt with these setback waivers before, so I'm not going to read through all the background. We do have a slide on the history of structure setback lines, and essentially this applies to pre-2006 land divisions, CSM's plats that had the 100-foot setback from right-of-way memorialized on their document. The property in question, again, it's a lot 2 as illustrated in this diagram here, and let me just bring this down so the whole slide's legible. Under the provisions of Chapter 13, our Land Division Ordinance, the applicant's request to reduce the setback to the current set of 100 feet to the current setback of 50 for their property, again, requires a correction instrument to be prepared by a registered land surveyor. And so that would be typically as a condition of approval of these setback waiver requests. Now, I would note on this that it's the intent of the applicant to split this lot. They haven't gone through the CSM process to do that yet. You can see from the slide, from this slide, that the proposal, there is an existing house on the existing lot too, and they're proposing to split this and create another lot to the south portion of their existing property. And the proposed future dwelling, as indicated down in the lower portion of this image, would fall within that 100-foot setback requirement from 110th Street. As I noted, the applicant would have to apply for a minor land division and obtain approvals from both the town and county before an additional dwelling can be built. And the surrounding area, I just note, is sparse, and the reduced setback, it's the view of staff that it would not diminish aesthetics of the area or, frankly, look out of place. Higher elevation land on the parcel to be created on the proposed lot is located closer to the road, so by granting the waiver to the 50-foot, the home would be able to be sited somewhat higher up rather than a lower portion of the lot. And location of the structure, of the proposed structure, would not interfere with sight lines at 110th Street. Just a couple other details here. Again, the future dwelling would encroach within that 100-foot setback that it currently exists. The future lot may need access via an easement with the existing driveway to the existing home on the current parcel due to a driveway separation requirement and the fact I think there's a culvert that exists roughly on the south boundary of the property that would come into play. The reduced structure setback would allow the future dwelling again to be placed on the higher portion of the lot. You can see from the contours, the lot kind of drops off to a lower area to the southwest corner of the lot. Several lots in the area do follow the 100-foot structure setback. However, the neighborhood is, again, not densely developed. It's pretty sparse. It does not appear that there would be any negative consequences from the committee granting this setback waiver. And we haven't received any comment on this from the town of Warren. And there was a comment from an abutting property owner that basically didn't have a problem with the waiver. I would note under findings, we've listed 4 findings. I won't read through each of these, but if you have any question, I can answer any questions. I can answer them. The only thing I'd emphasize with this is we feel that the granting of the waiver to reduce that setback again wouldn't negatively impact layout, design, continuity, or aesthetics of the neighborhood. I think that's the priority here. And lastly, the staff recommendation on this is that the Community Development Committee approve the setback reduction from 100 feet to the current zoning ordinance setback standard of 50 feet from the 110th Street right-of-way for Lot 2, and subject to based on the findings 1 through 4, and subject to the one condition we've referenced here, the requirement for the correction instrument to be prepared by a registered land surveyor, and and filed with the Register of Deeds office. And I just note lastly that the waiver applies to the existing lot, which will be split. The current home on the existing lot is set back 100 feet, and based on the topography, I don't think it's likely that they would build any additional structures within the 100 feet on the lot that will include the existing home. The new lot, the topography and the cover on it lend itself to building the home within that 50 to 100 foot area that would be permissible if you grant this waiver. And that's all I have. And I don't see the applicant here with us this evening, I would note.
Very good. I have to ask anyway, is there anybody here that would like to speak for or against this setback change? No, good. Then here ends the public hearing, and thank you. Does anybody have a question for Mr. Wozniak? No. Very good. Then I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the setback reduction.
Second from Sean Anderson. Very good. Any conversation? We have go ahead.
So with this, one of the recommendations you had was potential for a joint drive. Is that a condition we want to place here, or is that something you'll deal with at another time?
Yeah, I don't think that has to be, ultimately it's going to be the town's call from a town road on that driveway location, and I think that may be, again, dictated by a presence of a existing culvert on the lot and spacing requirements. The county spacing requirement comes into play, and also, you know, we have driveway standards for slope of the driveway, for example. But I don't think it has to be a condition on this action. Really, you're considering the waiver to that setback today, and that's how it was advertised.
Just one other question. You were pointing out that the property to the back of the upcoming lot, that south lot, was fairly low. Do you see that as, I'm, you know, just looking at the without looking at the reviews on the potential for septic sites and things like that, is there enough property that it would be left that would be able to work in all the other details?
I think there's plenty of higher ground if the soils are should happen to be suspect in the lowest area of the site on here. And to be honest, they're going to have to show us that when they submit their CSM for the split.
Any further questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. I think we'll ask Mr. Witt for our finance review.
Always saving the best for last. Exciting stuff. So normally I get up here and I say nothing to see, everything's fine. I actually have a couple of things I'm going to point out to you. We're at the end of the year here. So the first one I'll point out, because at the end of this I'm going to go, everything is still fine. But the Register of Deeds, if you look at them, so we're through December here, and if you look at their bottom line, we're $197,000 in the black. So Register of Deeds is $200,000 plus. So the other things that I show you aren't as scary than when you know that we already have $200,000 extra out of this department. Right. So one of them then is the Parks Department. So in the parks, We're over on net wages and fringes. We're usually not off on wages and fringes. That's usually a pretty good calculation. They have a little bit more variable in theirs because of the seasonal help. So I think they'll need to tighten that up a little bit and probably watch that a little closer. Missing on that is a miss. So that's probably a little bit further over than I would have anticipated. And if you look at their bottom line, they're negative 215,000 right now. So only a little bit of it is the wages and fringes. The rest of it is in grant revenues that have not been received yet. So we have 155,000 outstanding in grant revenues. That's not untypical at this time of year, because a lot of times grants come in after the end of the year is reported, and we'll get that grant revenue at the beginning of the year. But we want to make sure that we do get that. So those are two things that I would normally flag that I'm going to be keeping track of and watching for those. And then I have just one more that I would point out. Similarly to that, in the resource, land, and water, if you look at their bottom line, if you come all the way down to that bottom column, minus $273,000. So again, if you come up to the grants, the revenues, we're looking at $270,000 in grant revenues that have not been received yet. So again, it's one of those areas that we're not hitting the expectation yet on the revenues. I do fully anticipate that we will get there. So those are a couple of negative areas, though, that we need to make sure that we're watching and make sure we get that wrapped up for the end of 2022.
Are those federal grants?
They're mostly state grants, and we did do, after Ken brought this to our attention, Tim Stieber and myself did a lot of hard looking at it, and we have quite a few grants that are in but not showing up in the report yet, and grant dollars, I should say, and we have a couple that are pending. Based on what we have submitted and know we will be getting, because we've submitted it and we expect to be paid, we do expect that by the time this is done, the bottom line will be that, expenses and the revenue deficit, because there are some grant areas that, and we can go into, Tim would be happy to address this further, but there is one grant that we did not get as much money as we planned on. We weren't able to do as many practices. We have two other grants that we brought in greater amounts of money than planned, did quite well on those. But the deficit, though, is that we also didn't spend about, we're under, by the time we're done, we'll be under by about 200,000, but we didn't spend about 200,000. That's the way it is with the practices. Revenues are down, but expenses will be down too, and will stay down. So, but we can certainly, Tim's here and prepared and has done a ton of research. If you want more information this month or next month, we're ready, so.
These grants are grants that have been promised already, right? These aren't ones that we're hoping happens. These are ones that we're working on to be here.
Yeah, Ellen's saying that these are grants that we've received the grant, and it's just a matter of submitting the expenses to get reimbursed. So we're just waiting for the check in the mail. Or the checks come in the mail, it's been deposited, it's just waiting to clear through our system.
So it's not something that hasn't been sent yet. Okay.
Looking at resource, land, and water and planning, we have a big overage in software subscription renewals and other professional services. Is that something that we need to address for this next coming year that we're going into, that we're going to have an issue with?
Trying to find that. Ken's probably trying to find it too. Second. 7. Oh, there it is. Planning. No. Again, Tim can explain that in greater detail, but in the resource management one, what happened was, you'll see there's an underage in the wages. We had positions that we decided to fill related to the grants with contract labor instead of a limited term employee after they worked for a while but then left. And we also had 6 months where we didn't have the position filled while we were working to fill it. So we filled it with contract labor. So the contract labor goes through the other professional services, but then the wages are less. So again, those are the nuances of a budget. Up here, down over there, we don't spend the money, and then if we don't spend it, we don't submit for revenue, but the revenue looks down. Yeah, and then you said that's both in resource management and planning?
Planning was the software subscription and renewals.
Yep, okay, so the planning budget, that is every year, that's where we have our GIS, and those have been going up in cost, some unexpectedly. I don't have Brett here and didn't look at that one ahead of time. I can tell you that that budget, which is that closed budget, if you recall, that is totally funded by land records, transfer fees, and funding. And so that does not impact the county budget, and that was able to be covered by our fund balance in that account.
So on the planning one that we have up on the screen here, so a couple of things. One is we evaluate the department heads based upon the bottom line because things do change throughout the year. So if they're going to spend more in one area and they're going to spend less in another, or they're going to adjust their expenses to match revenues coming in, either up or down, they have the flexibility to do that. So we look at the bottom line. So when I look at this one, it's negative $9,869. Now the key on this one in particular, though different than most other ones, is the top line, general property tax, is zero. There's just a little dash there. There's no general property tax allocated. The budget called for $69,962 to be used. So that was what we expected for fund balance applied. There is no, fund balance applied isn't an actual thing. It's just you spent more than you made. So if you spent more than you make, it ends up with a red number at the bottom. So we anticipated that we would be at $69,000 negative, and we're only at $9,000. And so we've spent less of the money in the account than we anticipate. So that's actually a good thing on this budget when you look at it.
So from a practical perspective also, remember that there's a lot of business people that rely on that GIS, not just county. So go ahead.
I understand all of that, but if we're, part of that was because we had an unfilled position and we used contract labor, looking forward this next year, are we gonna have that, do we have that position filled yet, or are we looking to, or where are we at with that?
We had that position filled for over half of this past year. And again, the contract labor person is available to work again this year, and that's probably the route we'll go as we work to finish out the grant. And we'll be, again, it was a decision made because the contract labor, there were more factors than just should we fill it with a contract person or an LTE. Normally, we prefer long-term, limited-term employees, short-term, but that one, the grant, one of the grants that was funding, we had actually two positions, two LTEs. One of them was ending, the other was starting. We would have been trying to hire someone for only 6 months. Didn't make much sense. We didn't think we'd get any applicants. So we went with, Tim brought this to my attention and asked, can we just go with expanding the hours on the person who was the contract person? And that's what we did. So Tim managed it extremely well and was ahead of the game.
And I think we did adjust that FTE in the 23 budget.
Yes, we did.
Yep.
When the grant is going to land sometime in the next couple of weeks, and we'll have a much more clear view of how things pan out. Is that right? Okay, so let's take another look at resource, land, and water conservation next month, and it'll be a winner.
Sure.
Right.
At the end of the day, we'll all be within that 200,000 that Register of Deeds made for us, so.
And we can have cake.
We can thank Beth.
Yay. All right, any other questions? Okay, Ken, thank you very much. So I think we need to talk about announcements and correspondence. Anybody have announcements or correspondence? Ellen? No. No announcements or correspondence. Requests for future agenda items? Jerry?
Due to the Wildwood Trail, I would like that we have an update next month again, because this should be taken care of by next month in my small mind, but maybe it won't be. But at least an update. And a reason is that part of it's selfish. I have had a trail of people who live along the trail come into my shop over the past couple of weeks that are pretty upset about this, and I would just as soon they came in a good mood, you know, instead of the one they've had. So if we can have an update, I think that the committee deserves that. We need that to push forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. Anything else? All right. Date of the next meeting will be Thursday, February 16. And having said that, we'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you for coming.